Welcome to the MomCo Leadership Podcast. We believe that life and leadership are better in community. We're here to equip and encourage you as a leader and mom. We'll talk about real issues and practical tools to help you grow in your leadership, motherhood, and faith. Today, I get the privilege to talk to Dr. Juli Slattery. She is a trained clinical psychologist, and she runs the ministry Authentic Intimacy. Welcome, Dr. Juli.
So good to be with you.
I love it. I have been a fan and a follower and have been blessed by your ministry. So thank you so much. And it's just really fun to get to sit and have this chat with you today.
Yeah, that's great. We're just missing the coffee, right?
Right. Oh, I should have thought about that. And speaking of, you have a podcast called Java with Juli. So We'll make sure we link that for listeners to check that out as well. So let's dive in. I would love to know what prompted you to start Authentic Intimacy. It's been 12 years ago?
It has, yeah. There's no other way to say it other than I really just feel like God put it on my heart. And so I was more in the general family and marriage space, helping moms and wives with things, and went through just a season where I really felt like God burned in my heart for sexuality, sexual brokenness, just all the things that women were carrying, and they didn't have a safe place to go. And so that's just kind of how it all started.
Yeah, I love it. And you have so many resources and books and a Bible study that, again, are just so helpful for women in this space. So
yeah, it's been a joy to create them.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Let's chat a little bit about why should we have conversations about sexuality? What are some of your thoughts about that?
Yeah, boy, we need to have conversations about sexuality because we are sexual people, and we have to know how to navigate that. We need to know how to navigate sex within relationships and within marriage and with our kiddos, and we need to understand, like, why did God create us as sexual? And what do we do with our wounds and our shame? So I think a lot of us grew up without a lot of conversation around sex. Maybe just we got it from media and sort of the cultural messages, but maybe from the church you kind of learn the rules of the right and wrong. But very few of us grew up in a setting where you could have healthy conversations about sexuality. And so even for women listening to this right now, you might feel like you're leaning in, like, what's she going to say? Or you might feel a little nervous or shame because we haven't talked about it. So I think it's just critical that we pursue healing and truth, and we have safe places to share what's going on.
Yeah, I love it. I love the video that our leaders are going to be sharing this year, and think it's just going to bring up some great conversations and things for them to think about. And like you said, I think we get so many messages about sexuality from different places, and then as moms, trying to navigate raising children and knowing what to talk to them about, or issues that our parents didn't have to talk about with us, we now have to talk about with our children.
Yeah,
so.
I think every mom sort of feels like a pioneer today.
Yes.
Like, I have nowhere to go and to handle what I just saw on social media or this latest trend.
Right.
And so a lot of us just feel like we're making it up as we go. So we need safe places to talk about it and find truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And will you share a little bit, we were kind of chatting offset about this, just maybe some stats or things that you've learned about pornography and how that is affecting culture and just our beliefs and thoughts about sexuality?
Yeah, it is just, pornography is just, here's a big word, but ubiquitous. I can barely say it. But essentially means it's everywhere. So we live in a pornified culture. And it's not just the people who are looking at porn, it's that pornography has really shaped the way Western culture thinks about sexuality. And so I just, a few months ago, saw a research study from Psychology Today that found that between the ages of 18 and 35, 98% of men and 73% of women had looked at porn within the last 6 months. Wow. And the more we see research like that, the more we recognize that this is really everybody's experience. It's the exception, the person who would say, no, I never really saw porn, never really looked at porn. Every marriage is impacted by pornography at some level. And in every family, there's somebody who's going to be impacted by it, struggling with it. And so it's everywhere. And I think you asked, like, how has it affected our culture? like I mentioned, it's really shaped how we think about sex. So we think about sex now all in terms of my particular pursuit of pleasure, like what I want, when I want it. We think about sex more in terms of the body, like how do we look? How are we sexually performing? How do I get that sexual high? Instead of thinking about sex as an expression of intimacy, a journey of knowing each other with imperfect bodies that don't always perform the way we want them to. So it sets a lot of pressure on marriages. They don't know how to navigate just the normal flow of, I want to have sex, my husband doesn't, or we like different things, or sex isn't always toe curling fireworks,
right.
Because pornography sets those kinds of expectations.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What, listeners hearing those things might be like, oh, that sounds so doom and gloom.
Yeah.
It is some reality, but what hope or what tips do you have for us as we live in this culture dealing with that?
Yeah, it does feel in some ways like doom and gloom, as you said, but the first step in solving a problem is saying it out loud. Mm. And so for a lot of us, like, we've never had a conversation about pornography, mm-hmm. even within marriage. I think it was maybe 15 years into my marriage before I really had a good conversation with my husband about pornography. And it was like this unspoken thing that you couldn't even talk about if you were struggling with it. Mm-hmm. And so I think in a lot of marriages, you end up discovering it or keeping it a secret if you're using pornography. So getting all that out in the open and being able to share your sexual history with your spouse, being able to get the kind of help you need, that equips you then to have the right conversations with your kids. Because when we have secrets and we have shame and we're confused, we're going to bring all of that into a conversation that we might try to have with our children. So the hope is that once we start talking about it, there are great resources that can help us address pornography, but also kind of reset thinking about sex in a healthier way. And so that's what I get to see in my job all the time, is just that transformation process. And it's not just one podcast you listen to. It's setting your intention that I want to get healthy, and I want to understand what healthy sexuality actually looks like.
Yeah, I love that. I think so many people carry around a lot of sexual shame, and like you said, whether it's pornography or other things, but when it's brought to the light, that's where the healing and the hope can really begin to start.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think a lot of us carry sexual shame. And I think the predominant message of our culture is don't feel shame, don't feel shame, don't feel shame. But when you keep secrets, you are going to feel shame as much as you tell yourself not to, because shame is the feeling of I need to hide. There's something wrong with me. And so when we can bring that in the open and take a look at it and really pursue some truth and healing through it, then we don't have to carry that shame anymore.
Yeah, it's really freeing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would love to hear just your thoughts about what are some tips for our MomCo leaders listening about how can we promote honest and healthy conversations about sex around our MomCo table in a way that everyone feels safe and honoring, and would just love your thoughts about that.
Yeah, boy, that's a great question. So I can tell you some of the things that we do at our ministry. When we have conversations about sex, we set some ground rules. And I think that helps everybody feel comfortable. So, for example, we will say, hey, like, this group is for you to share your own journey, but we're going to ask you not to share anything about your spouse. Or when we talk about sex, you shouldn't be sharing anything where we could picture you and your spouse or your partner in a sexual act. And so some of those things like confidentiality, so those are the kinds of ground rules that we set in our group. Now, if you might not get into that deep of stuff in your groups, but just to say, hey, listen, like, this is an awkward conversation for a lot of people. And even around this table, we probably have a lot of different beliefs about sex. And this isn't the place where we're going to start hashing those out. So here is the objective of this conversation. We want to talk about, like, how do we address barriers to sex within a marriage relationship or partnership. Like, what does that look like to connect? What does it look like to work through something like a betrayal or pornography struggle? Like, how do you as a mom who's exhausted make it a priority to work on sexual intimacy? So when you set that kind of intention, you're telling the women not just what they can talk about, but what it's not going to be safe right here if you talk about this. Right. And you may have some women that, need a safe place to share and who say, I have sexual trauma in my past. Mm-hmm. Or, like I saw pornography for the first time when I was 6 years old. My husband's been battling it. And if that happens, you just can stop and encourage and say, thank you so much for sharing that. I know you're not the only one. There's probably a lot of us around this table that have some pain in this area. Right. And you might say, hey, can we just pray for you? Just that God would give you healing and comfort and wisdom. And then you can sort of redirect the conversation. Yeah. I think it's also helpful to have some resources available before you go into the conversation. So maybe a counselor or two in the area that you have confidence in, to have maybe a book or two or a ministry that you can point to and say, hey, if you have more questions about this might be something you want to check out. So that's sort of the way that you can be sensitive to some of these deeper issues without feeling like this has to be the time where we delve into them.
Right. Yeah, and leaders, definitely we encourage you to think about gathering these resources ahead of time. Talk to your church, talk to the leadership, and get their insight and have that ready, because like you said, it will bring up some things for moms around the table. And also use your mentor moms, women who have walked before and have come out on the other side of some of these issues can be a real encouragement as well.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, and prepare your mentor moms, because part of it is even in the generation, what we're facing with sexuality and even views on sexuality are so different that sometimes an older mom might not have a sensitivity to some of the things that younger moms are battling today. And so really equipping them, preparing them for encouragement, not necessarily for do this or don't do that.
Right, right. That's really wise. Love that. Would love to know as well, Dr. Juli, what's some encouragement you can give our listeners who maybe are struggling in this area of their marriage and just don't know what to do, feel a little bit stuck?
Yeah. Well, let me first say that I have been there. So you'll hear me sharing the video, like for the first 15 years of our marriage, that's the first half of our marriage. Like sex was the area where we had the most conflict, the most difficulty, where I struggled the most. And so it's kind of ironic, like God often calls us to work in areas where we once were very, very weak.
Right.
So, a few things, I know it sounds really weird, but this is something that was transformational for me, is to actually pray about my sex life. And, it's funny because I think as Christians, we learn to pray about lots of different things, but we feel very awkward, like asking God for help in that area. But I didn't know where else to turn. And so I just started praying, like for a few months, like, Lord, would you help me in this area? Because I don't know where to turn. I don't know how to fix things. I feel stuck. And God's the one that created sex. He is our ever-present help in the time of trouble. And so I would encourage moms to do that. And then the second thing I would say is take advantage of resources, because it is something that we really haven't been discipled in. And that was something that struck me about 5 or 6 years into this ministry, is that the culture has discipled us in sexuality. Pornography has, all the media we consume, like we, without realizing it, have just learned to think about sex in an unhealthy way. And I feel like the church has been historically very silent on this topic, and if at all, they've done a little bit of education. Like maybe like one sermon every couple of years, or, like we just don't talk about it. And so fortunately we do have, in today's day and age, a lot of people who are in the space of helping Christians navigate sexual issues, including in marriage and parenting. And so take advantage of those resources. Find other women that you can journey with, because we do learn a lot in community when we open up these topics. And if needed, don't be afraid to reach out for help, because it is an area where sometimes we need that expertise.
Right. And I think one thing too is to just encourage the investment is worth it, and it is an investment. You know, marriage overall takes work.
Yes, it does.
And I think, again, messages, culture tell us, like movies or shows, like it's just going to be easy always, and
no, it's
so
not.
super fun and amazing. And it's like, it takes some work.
Yeah, and I really think, the more I've done this work, particularly within the context of marriage, it's good that it takes work, because ultimately, God wants us to learn to love each other well, and as you get older in marriage, you start to realize that love always is going to cost you something. Love that comes easy really isn't love; it's just easy
Convenience.
Yes, but I can say, like now over 30 years of marriage, that because my husband and I have learned what it is to be unselfish in this area and vulnerable and be honest about our struggles. Like it's become a very sweet kind of love. And so the difficulties, even though we hate them, they're often the invitation to a deeper vulnerability and intimacy. And so God never wastes anything. Like the greatest pain, like he can use in a relationship to actually take you deeper into being vulnerable and learning trust and to having a great connection.
Yeah, I love that. Great hope and encouragement from someone on the other side. And again, you just work with women and families, and it's just such a blessing, again, to have you leading the way and talking about these things, because like you said, we sometimes are really uncomfortable talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I was too, I remember the first time I ever spoke publicly on sex, and it was sort of like something I got roped into, and I had hives up and down my neck, like I was so nervous. I was sweating like crazy.
Yeah.
Like all these women were completely silent, just staring at me. And so I get it. Like it's a hard topic, not just to speak on, but it's a hard topic to hear, just because it can be so triggering and so sensitive.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for doing it. And like you said, I think more people in general struggle with these things. So it's why we wanted to talk about it here at the MomCo with our moms and leaders, because we know and we hear from them, like we need help, we need resources. So we were really glad to have you to be able to do that.
Well, so glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
This has been awesome. Leaders, we know your time is valuable. We're proud of you for investing in yourself by listening in today. We know that when you invest in moms, you change the world. We believe in you, and we're cheering for you.